We'll begin with words from the Bible, Psalm 23 in the Hebrew. Mizmor LeDavid, Adonai ro'i lo echzar binodesh hayar bitzeni, almei menuchot yinahaleni, nafshi yeshovev yancheni b'maglei tzedek lema'an shemo. Gam ki elech begetzal mavet lo irara ki ata imadi, shiftecha umishantecha hemi yanachamuni, tarok lefanai shochan neged sororai dishanta vashem enoshi kosi revaya. Ach tov v'chesed yirdafuni kol yemei chayai, v'shavti b'veit Adonai le'orech yamim. Please join me in Psalm 23 in the English. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guides me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. This morning we gather to say goodbye with sadness, but with also great love and affection. We bring tribute to the memory of Marlene Siegal, a loving daughter, a loving sister, a loving wife, mother, grandmother, great-grandmother, aunt, and friend. Our tradition has a prayer called Eshet Chayil, a woman of valor, which traditionally is recited every Friday night at the Shabbos table. I know that the Shabbos table was a very special place for Marlene, and so it's fitting to read that line from our Bible. Eshet Chayil miyimsa v'rachot mipnei michra, batak ba'le bala v'shala lo yaksar. What a precious find is a woman of valor. Her worth is far beyond rubies. Her husband puts his confidence in her and lacks no good thing. She's good to him, never bad all the days of her life. She opens up her hand to the needy, extends her hand to the poor. She's clothed with strength and splendor. She looks to the future cheerfully. She opens her mouth with wisdom. Her tongue is guided by kindness. She oversees the activities of her household. She never eats the bread of idleness. Her children come forward and bless her. Her husband praises her, saying, "Many women have done superbly, but you surpass them all." Charm is deceitful and beauty vain, but a God-fearing woman is much to be praised. Extol her for the fruit of her hand, and wherever people gather, her deeds speak her praise. Every single year we read the Torah, and we rejoice at its end, even though the final section deals with the details of Moses' death. Upon its completion, then, we joyously return to the beginning and start to read the Torah from its opening. Judaism teaches that our lives are like a book. Our actions, words, and memories are recorded. And so today, Marlene's book is finished. Its last chapter is sealed. The rabbis imagine Moses crying while writing the final chapters of the Torah telling of his death. And so it is that for today, though Marlene's book is sealed with our tears, we must rejoice, for now we have the opportunity to share her book from the beginning. Her life story is filled with blessings, love, and lots of smiles, or at least smiley faces. Today we have the opportunity to share an abridged version of her book, which we hold dear in our hearts. Marlene has returned home in peace at the age of 73. She's left behind many in mourning, her 3 sons and their spouses who became her daughters, Norman and Deanne, Adam and Lorna, Joel and Tammy. The apples of her eye, her grandchildren, Brett and Nurit, Todd and Rachel, Kimberly, Josh, Reagan and Jared, David and Sarah, Alana, Ian, and Aaron. And the diamonds in her crown, her 3 great-granddaughters, Hadassah, Leah, Miriam, and Zahava, her brother Jerry, sister-in-law Patty, and her cherished companion of these last 12 years, you, Sandy. Marlene now joins her beloved husband, Erwin, her parents of blessed memory, Ben and Lillian Steinberg. She joins them all in their eternal home in heaven. When I met with the family, it was incredible outpouring of love and memories, and several of our family members want to share special reflections and tributes to Marlene. So I'm first going to call upon two of the grandchildren, first Reagan and then Kimberly.
Thank you. How fortunate are we to question the world and constantly view every day as an opportunity to grow? How fortunate are we to have Shabbos? Where does our foundational gratitude and positive outlook on the world come from? Grandma Marlene truly created something amazing. She came from a humble family of 4 and built a Siegal dynasty. She showed us how to love. She showed us how to embrace, to take each moment and hold on to it. She had the ability to look at the world positively and wake up each day just as excited as she was the previous day. We saw this until the moment she left us. She was a fighter. She was strong and had a desire to push through. She never let her health bring her down or define her self-worth. I have such gratitude to my grandma for the values she instilled in our family and ultimately who she made me today. As Rabbi said, Grandma loved Shabbos. Shabbos was always a priority. Every Friday night, Siegals would gather. We would make brachas and enjoy beautiful festive meal together. Discussion took place, not just superfluous conversation, but conversation about the days, the world at large, political issues, current events, our thoughts on controversial topics, and more. The Siegals always discussed. Growing up, when we went to movies, we left movies and discussed the overall plot and the significance and symbolism behind certain qualities and characters in the film. We spoke about character progression and the overall message a film was trying to communicate. We were just always encouraged to think critically and push ourselves to question. Grandma always encouraged us to be inquisitive. Grandma was always a curious cat. She was inspired to learn more, to take courses and find speaking events to go to. Wherever she stepped foot, she lit up a room. Her friendliness and warm personality are contagious. I remember when Grandma first meets anyone, she shakes their hand with both of her hands, and she says, "How do you do?" She's such a genuine and sweet, kind-hearted woman. Grandma was always adventurous. She loved hiking, going for walks, and constantly being active. She never felt any activity was beyond her capability. I have specific memories of hiking with Grandma at Nelson's Ledges, where we roamed the woods, sat on rocks, and sifted through crisp fall leaves. Grandma once took the girls, Alana, Kimberly, and me, to Amish country, where we indulged in delicacies like cheese and licorice. All the cousins grew up spending special days with Grandma on her birthdays. Even these birthday presents are so indicative of Grandma's personality. She didn't want to just give us a physical gift. She wanted to give the gift of creating a memory together. Grandma and I had a go-to birthday celebratory day. We always, without fail, went to paint pottery, and of course, each piece of pottery had a smiley face at the bottom, so when you reached the bottom of the mug, bowl, or plate, you would always be happy. We would typically go out for a birthday breakfast meal, because for those of you who know, I'm a breakfast fanatic, and we would always end the date with ice cream. She would get vanilla soft serve, half cherry sauce, and half marshmallow fluff. I remember sleeping over Grandma's and waking up to maple goodness as she made challah French toast, and I could always look forward to a glass of strawberry milk. Sometimes we would put marshmallows in the microwave and see how big we could make them expand before taking them out and eating them. I remember hide and seek at her old house. I remember feeding the ducks on her back porch. I remember jumping on the water bed together Shabbos evening. All the cousins would pile on the bed, cuddle, and spend time together schmoozing. I remember girl talk in Grandma's secret closet space behind the long mink coats. Grandma made the meanest charosis in town, and her sweet and sour chicken was also good too. Grandma always let me come over after school in high school to use her place as a hangout while waiting to go to Hebrew school or various activities. It was the best when she came home early and I could see her before leaving for the night. I remember Grandma would take over when a parent could attend mom's or muffins or dad's and donuts. Grandma was always there for me. She never wanted me to miss an opportunity like that. I remember Grandma chaperoning Todd and me to our Bible trip in New York. We walked the streets of New York together, and she even bought us I Love NY t-shirts for souvenirs. One of my most recent memories was Grandma teaching me how to make Afghan blankets. For those of you who know, Grandma was always making those colorful, twisted blankets for newborns and families as they moved into new homes. I made my very own Afghan with her help. A vivid memory I have of Grandma is how long she spent davening after lighting her Shabbos candles. She knew the power of tefillah after lighting, and she spent so much time and effort praying for each of her family members and all of her friends. The intensity of her prayer was beautiful to watch. She covered her eyes. We would all remain silent, at least until we were 15 or above, and she would sway with intent back and forth. Grandma really taught me to daven with intensity and intention after lighting my own Shabbos candles each week. When I learned about the power of prayer after lighting candles, I had such a big smile on my face because the first person I automatically thought of was my amazing grandmother. Grandma always had a desire to be close to others. She was warm and even called us loving names. I always felt so fortunate to have a grandma that referred to me by my Hebrew name, Rivki, from Rivka. When I was younger, I thought, how weird. And I grew up, and as I grew older, I felt so special and closely connected to her nickname. She was using a name I'd never been referred to before, and she always shortened everyone's Hebrew name in the family and made it with an EY sound because she felt it sounded very loving. So, for example, Rivki, Nachi, Brachi, Tuvi, Rachi. I realized I even do the same with my friends, ending their names in E sounds, and I never even really realized that until putting this together. My grandma was such a special woman. She was so special. When one departs from this world, we never focus on their top business deals, the multi-million-dollar home they were able to purchase with their high salary grade, or the designer clothes that they wore. We focus on the incredible character traits that made them so lovable and likable. Grandma left this world living each moment to the fullest. She truly left an incredible legacy behind. She left a legacy of children, grandchildren, and even great-grandchildren that will continue to build upon the values she instilled in her own children. She's so much to be proud of and has accomplished more than I even knew. She lived for her relationships and constantly gave to others in an admirable way. Smiley was just what she was. She was bright, vibrant, positive, and just such a beautiful person inside and out. We love you, Grandma, more than you can ever imagine, and we will never forget the legacy you left behind, and you made a true impact in this world, and you should be very proud. Thank you.
Grandma committed so completely to life that she had explosive reactions to even life's subtle stimuli. Her laughter from a mediocre joke from one of her children or grandchildren would ring out deafeningly. There are very few things in this world that make me happier than that totally uninhibited, roaring laughter. Her clear blue eyes would well up and her whole body would shake with joy. If we had good news to share, Grandma undoubtedly would give us the best reaction. She was over the moon to hear us speak passionately about a newfound hobby or interest and burst into tears when we announced accomplishments. To be completely honest, I partially seek out unconventional clubs and activities and embark upon challenging pursuits just so I can talk to Grandma about it and witness her memorable reactions. The only risk with sharing stories and news with her was that somehow her grandchild Alana witnessing a childbirth as an EMT would turn into Alana personally delivering triplets in an active war zone. We all lived in fear of getting a call that Grandma's absurdly inflated version of one of our achievements made it into the Jewish news. To attempt to illustrate the amount of faith Grandma had in her clan, when I first moved back to Cleveland, I needed to buy a new car. I was driving somewhere with Grandma and Sandy, and Grandma said, without a trace of irony in her voice, "Kimberly, why don't you go to that Porsche dealership right on Chagrin?" That is the kind of confidence the woman had in us. It is so powerful to have that kind of advocate always steadfastly in your corner. Grandma was progressive and funky and alternative before all of those things were trendy. She was hard on herself, always wishing she was doing and experiencing more. But at the same time, she had a freedom of spirit that felt contagious and invigorating. She was always moving and doing, always discovering obscure art, music, and interesting educational events in Cleveland, and generally sucking the marrow out of life. Her mind was sharp and bottomless. We would become so enmeshed in deep conversation during car rides that we missed exits and took lengthy detours routinely. But it never bothered us. She was an explorer, always game to go on an adventure to try new things. The second I got back to Cleveland, she was loading me down with booklets of events in the area, of classes I could audit and free music events I could attend. She loved the art museum, and when we would go, it wasn't to be wandering around, lost in our own respective worlds. We would talk about what we saw and how the paintings made us feel. She would take our grandkids on long hikes and bike rides. She biked the whole towpath with my brother David, naturally stopping to read every informational sign along the way. David swears he was bleeding by the end of it. She took me and her granddaughter Reagan on a hike for hours until we were begging her to take us home to rest, while she was trying to convince us to drive out to the lake with her to watch the sunset. She came to all of her grandchildren's sporting, music, and school events. She even traveled with my family to different cities and states for my gymnastics meets, and we would all pile into hotel rooms. She made Shabbat dinners on Friday a priority, even when we wanted to do things with friends and at times felt the uncomfortable weight of obligation. The fact that it was always there, that we knew that the family was all getting together every Friday to laugh and fight and play, created an invaluable sense of comfort in my chest. Because I saw my cousins every week, they became my very best friends. My aunts and uncles became extra sets of parents. I have this big, amazing, overwhelmingly loving support system because Marlene Siegal envisioned and created it. There's no way I can thank her in words for doing that for all of us, for molding the fiercely loyal, involved, and deeply caring culture of our family, and for providing me with an army of people to lean on. She is an absolutely inspirational human being, and she is not gone because she rests prominently in all of us.
Now we'll hear from two of the three boys, first Norman and then Adam.
Thank you. Beautiful comments from the grandchildren. It's funny because as you get older, you see the family develop, and you see, it's just amazing. It's just amazing. And we lean more and more. I told the kids we lean more and more on them as we get a little bit older. But fortunately, they're up to the task, and I think you could see that. The kids are amazing, and I think they had just all of them very special and unique relationships with my mom, with our mom. Adam's going to talk a little bit about certain parts of my mom and her life. I wanted to talk about just one special part of her life, which was her connection with God and her spirituality, because it was kind of private, but we would know because we're part of the family. And she connected with God in many ways, but two important ones were through her Shabbos prayers, which the girls talked about, but then also through Tehillim, or the Psalms. And so my son Todd was in Israel for a couple of years ago. And when he came back late 2014, he had been there for about a year and a half. My mom was going through her cancer treatments, and she was struggling with that. And so Todd thought that it would be potentially, a little bit risky, but potentially helpful for her to have the Tehillim, which are the Psalms of David. And So he got the Tehillim for my mom. And you never know how somebody's going to respond to something like that. But she responded in the best of ways. And so I talked to Todd yesterday about whether or not she had a favorite psalm, because you could sometimes glean the essence of somebody through what's important to them, what they respond to. And so he drove in from Chicago and at 2 a.m. sent me an email. And I checked the time because I wanted to know kind of what time he was up till. Sort of like circling back through his emails to see if Grandma at one point had told him what her favorite psalm was. And he sent me a couple of emails that my mom sent him. One was from actually June 9th of 2014. And this is a direct quote from my mom that Todd sent me from his email files. But I find more comfort thanking God for all the good in my life and asking him for health instead of dwelling on the negative. Really powerful. May 7th, 2015, quoting my mom again. I want you to know that I have kept it by my bedside, meaning the Tehillim. So this is it. And the little markers are all my mom's favorite Tehillim. There's a lot of them. I had no idea, but I found this at her house last night when I was there. I want you to know that I have kept it by my bedside and touched it every day, and have taken it on every trip that we've been on since then, since getting it, even overnight ones. It has given me comfort and makes me think of you with love and to thank Hashem every day. Those are amazingly powerful words. And then on one email, she said that her favorite psalms were 116 and 118. Those are two of her favorites. Parts of both of these two psalms are said during Hallel, while davening during the holidays in Rosh Chodesh. And it's all about praising God. And so I'm going to tell you Todd's interpretation because I think he said it so well. I told him he should be presenting this because he was the inspiration. But I don't think he could read my handwriting, and we didn't have a computer, so I couldn't print it out. But what he indicated is absolutely the truth. And I'm just going to read it verbatim. I'm just going to quote Todd because I think it says exactly what I would have said. So based on Grandma's quotes, her favorite psalms, and just speaking with her, I think the insight is that despite everything she was going through, she felt truly blessed for the good in her life and wanted to thank God. Her battle with cancer, though incredibly challenging, created an opportunity for family and friends to reach out. And I think she felt overwhelmed and humbled by the realization that so many people loved her and supported her so much. And that to me, and again, this is Todd speaking, and that to me speaks volumes about Grandma. She always had this positive outlook that ultimately allowed her to battle for so long. She refused to be defined by the negative and rather chose to embrace the positive, even during the most challenging periods of her life. And even last Friday through Sunday, she was in the hospital, and then we sent her to Montefiore Hospice. As she sat in the hospital or the hospice, she commented to me, meaning Todd, how blessed she was. And she passed away a couple of days ago. So I thought that would be important to share because it was an important part of her that wasn't so public. But it was fundamentally what drove her. And I think people's fundamental values are what allow them to create a lasting legacy. I think it's on your values that everything rests. And my mom had wonderful values. She had a wonderful spirituality. She truly did have a connection with God. She truly did have a connection with her family. And that's why I think her legacy will be eternal.
Good morning. I'm Adam Siegal, the second of three sons of Marlene and Erwin Siegal. As people talk to me about my mother, they describe her optimism, her beauty inside and out, her keen intellect and intellectual curiosity, and her love of life. And this is all very true. And yet I find myself compelled to share a personal secret with you. When people talk to me about my mother, I often find myself smiling in my mind's eye and thinking, as her son, I had front row seats to this beautiful person, this beautiful soul. I had the wonderful blessing of receiving the full array of her energy and her life force. And though you describe her well, I know firsthand that the beauty of the whole exceeds the facets that you have seen, though your view was undoubtedly bright and radiant. I feel this way because in the public forum, my mom preferred to work in quiet ways. She was not the loudest one, the one out front. She sometimes even had self-doubt, as we all do at various times in our lives. But in the inner sanctum of her family, Mom's fire burned brightly and magnificently. In fact, this sometimes had unintended consequences. For example, looking back on the early years, I sometimes think that my parents were 2 to 3 generations ahead. What I mean is, they must have discovered the X Games extreme parenting program way back in the 70s. Let's talk about bedtimes, for example. When we were very young, my parents heard the following. They heard that a good night's sleep was the key to the successful development of a young mind. Well, let me tell you, that is all they needed to hear. Right at that moment, they set our bedtime at 7:30 p.m. from the time we were in kindergarten until we were old enough to vote. 7:30 p.m. I'm serious about this. In fact, at 7:30 p.m., they would open the front door with a whole neighborhood of kids playing on the street and start yelling at the top of their lungs, Adam, Norman, Jolie. And here's the good part. Time for bed. Oh no, did that just happen again? Can we please talk about embarrassment? I mean, at one point, we were saying, sorry, gotta go, to kids we babysat on the weekends. I think the whole experience left me with bedtime-related post-traumatic stress syndrome. This was quite the daily routine, I gotta tell you. But that was their love. We had kitchen duties that had to be executed with military precision, complete with quality checks. We rewrote school papers 34 times until they were good enough to be published. And we were expected to be all in before people used those words. And why? Because Mom was all in. She was all in, personally invested, head, heart, and hands. And that's the way it was. Joel described a story about my mother's view of failure. Joel ultimately became the regional president of the synagogue youth group when he was in high school. But before that, he lost an earlier election in the same group. Joel was devastated and didn't know what to do next. Enter Mom. She says, Joel, you didn't win that election, and now you have time to pursue other things. He knew he was in trouble. You said you want to be a doctor? How about going down to Cleveland State to see if any of the labs need help in research? How did she think up this stuff? But you know what Joel did? He went down to Cleveland State, and he convinced a medical lab to let a high school kid do a science internship, and that kid went on to become a neurosurgeon. Another time, my mom was trying to get me to enter a speech contest in my junior year of high school. I had written an essay that she thought would be perfect for the contest. I just didn't see the point, but I knew I was in trouble also. We went back and forth for weeks, and I still had no interest in doing it. The day of tryouts for the speech contest, I was about to leave for school, and my mom suddenly pops out her hand like this, holding a stack of note cards with something typed on them. She looked deep into my eyes, the way she did, and said, Maishi, because that's what she called me. Maishi, she said, I've typed your speech onto these cards. You have a free period before the contest. Practice the speech and give it. I'm excited to hear how it goes. I'm standing there on my way out the door to go to school. I just looked back into those pretty blue eyes staring at me in that matter-of-fact gaze that we all know about, and said the only thing I could say, "Okay, Mom." And I gave the speech. I did very well in the speech contest, and in so doing, I discovered a new side of myself that only my mom knew was there. In the last day of my mom's life, by some twist of fate, I found myself for a short stretch of time alone with my mom, just holding her hand. I looked at my mom's face and then back down to our clenched hands, and I felt a lifetime of love and comfort. I felt that deep spiritual sense of calm from knowing that someone can know me so well, so deeply, and love me so unconditionally. As I think about my mom, the intense things, the funny things, the adventures, all the colors of her glorious personal rainbow, I will forever be thankful and many times blessed for having a front row seat and being a primary objective of a woman, my mother, Marlene Siegal, who is in every way, through every facet of her wonderful life, all in.
What beautiful tributes for a beautiful person. Marlene was so proud of each and every one of you, so supportive to all who knew her, gracious and giving. She was competitive when it came to playing games. She was creative and effervescent, persistent and tenacious. She modeled all of those quotes for you. She had a famous quote. It was, "It builds character, and let's make a memory." She lived for the moment and made the most of each and every day with her beautiful blue eyes and that huge smile. Marlene was born and raised here in Cleveland, moved from Euclid to Heights High during high school. She went to Ohio State for one semester, but then came home to marry her sweetheart, her intended Erwin, at 18. Years later, when the boys were old enough, she did go back to school, slowly making her way through Cleveland State, and she shared Joel's high school graduation party with her college graduation. She even began classes towards a master's degree in urban planning and enjoyed taking side classes on the side, like pottery. And you all have the results, all of those kiddush cups and all the other things that she made. Marlene worked with her beloved Erwin. She worked at the Temple Tifereth Israel. She worked for Joel in her last years as your medical records specialist. She worked at CASE in biomedical education and for Victor S. Voinovich. Marlene met her beloved Erwin on a blind date. The story goes that he wasn't her type. They labeled themselves not compatible, but still Erwin just kept hanging around and she stayed with him, and it was meant to be. They were married on November 25th, 1961 at the Charter House on Euclid Avenue. They shared a loving, supportive, and strong marriage built on common values, a united front. They were one, a very philosophic approach to life with a family-first commitment. You already heard what incredible, amazing mother she was, giving each one of you so many experiences, pushing you to be involved in youth group, camps, summer programs, sending you to university school, investing everything in you, emotionally, financially, physically. Together, Mom and Dad reinvigorated the Kadima Middle School program youth group at B'nai Yeshurun. They became the youth group advisors for USY when you were going through, and Mom and Dad sent you to college. She was your biggest fan, set high expectations for you, but was also your greatest support. She was your teacher, your guide, your role model, and your mentor. She loved her daughters-in-law as her own. You each were daughters to her. And you each have incredible memories that you shared with her. Adam and Lorna, you shared with me you had a very special picnic with Marlene. In her new house, the first day she was in it, no paint, no furniture or anything, she made it a picnic. Joel and Tammy, you shared with me that when she visited you in Philadelphia, your heat was broken. She was very cold, so that night she slept in bed with the two of you. She always believed it was important to make memories and create experiences. And that's definitely one of them. She also loved that memory that celebrating Joel's birthday, they were driving back from New Jersey, probably to Philadelphia, secretly purchasing a birthday cake at a gas station and stopping at an overlook on the highway with a beautiful view, pulling out the birthday cake, singing happy birthday, and with 4 plastic spoons, or forks, I'm not sure what, just digging into that cake. Grandma Marlene, or Grandma Lean as some called, was the best, the ultimate grandma, and now great-grandma. She lived for you, love you so much. She was active. She loved her girls' night out with the grandchildren. Every Monday for Marlene was Happy Monday. She loved connecting with each and every one of you. Ian said it's amazing how Marlene could look into you and see everything. She was always health conscious, always active, always exercising. She loved playing games. She loved her incredible friend circle, especially Marcia, who met with us last night, who was Marlene's matron of honor. She lived in the present. She was a bit of a procrastinator. She was nocturnal. She could text you at 3 a.m. There's a debate about her cooking. Some say she was amazing, some say not. Some claim she believed in cooking everything well done. In fact, some say she didn't invent beef jerky, but she could have. Regardless, all loved her veal brisket and her buttered noodles. In her 50s, she went alone to volunteer in Israel. She ended up volunteering with the IDF, the Israeli army, cleaning guns and other things, and she sent back pictures to the family of her in full army uniform. She loved taking trips, that long sailing trip that she took, and so many other adventures. She was politically active, volunteered for the Lee Fisher campaign, went to rallies, gathered the family at the March for Soviet Jewry in Washington in 1987, and even recently attended anti-fracking protests. She volunteered at the Western Reserve Historical Archive. She loved doing research. She volunteered at the Gathering Place, attending lectures with Sandy at Siegal College. She had very strong English and writing skills. Grandson David can attest that while studying for his GREs, he was amazed that Grandma Marlene knew every single vocabulary word that he had to study. You already heard Judaism was a very important part of her life, raised at Community Temple with her brother Jerry. She and Erwin together running the youth groups at B'nai Yeshurun, where our youth lounge, the Klein Siegal Youth Lounge, is dedicated in part to the Siegal family and to Erwin. Marlene became an adult bat mitzvah, worked at the temple. Shabbos and holidays were essential. Do you know that that Shabbos prayer with the candles lasts for 20 minutes? They didn't say that. And that if you interrupted her, she'd have to start from the beginning. She was an incredible daughter. Along with Jerry and Patty, Marlene and Sandy cared for Grandma Lillian, who died just 3 years ago. They traveled with her, spent all their time with her, shared her blue eyes and her positive outlook on life. Marlene was so lucky to have found Sandy, set up by a cousin, Cindy. Sandy, you told me the fix was in after attending a funeral right here. You talked to Cindy, who had worked for you, in the parking lot after a funeral service. She invited you to lunch and said, "Can I bring a friend?" You said no, but later that night you called back and said sure, you were game for it. That lunch you met Marlene, and then you met this family, which is now your family, and you fell for all of them. Sandy, you were always so patient with Marlene. You could redirect her with a smile. You loved walking and talking with her, and she always called her her angel. She was a fighter, so brave and courageous, with so many challenges, Losing her Erwin so young, fighting her own cancer, she always lived life with a smile. As her health declined recently, you gave her so much. She was extremely well cared for. With respect and love from the whole family, you watched over her, still allowing her, and she did it herself, being the matriarch. You gave her dignity and love. You shared special moments with her this past week, encircling her, having parties with her, sharing some of the secrets, like the whispered Shabbos blessings that she finally told you all that she said, recalling all those special special birthday trips, whether it was to the Glass Museum in Toledo, whether it was the William Mather ship, the safari, all those special experiences that you had with her. Ian, you serenaded her, singing for her. Aaron, you made that special coffee roast that she requested. She knew that you loved her so much. You should all know how much she loved you. She was ready to go. Now we can surely say that Marlene is at peace. She's returned home, returned to her parents, to her beloved Erwin. Tehi zichrona baruch. May her name always be for a blessing. And we say, Amen. At this point, we'll rise for the mourners for the memorial prayer. El mare rachamim shochem bamromim. המצא מנוחה נכונה תחת כנפי השכינה במעלות קדושים הטהורים כזרקים אסירים את נשמת מחלי בת בנימין וחייליה שהלכה לעולמה בגן עדן זה מנוחתה אנא ברחמים אסתירה בסתר נפח לעולמים וצר בצרכים הנשמתה אדוני נחלתה ותנוח בשלום המשכבה ונאמר Amen. Exalting, compassionate God, grant infinite rest in your sheltering presence among the holy and pure to the soul of Michli, Marlene Siegal, who has gone to her eternal home. Merciful One, we ask that our loved one find perfect peace in your eternal embrace. May she merit the reward for living a righteous life. May she rest in peace, and we all say, Amen. Please be seated. Interment will follow at Mount Olive Cemetery. The family will then receive friends at the home of Joel and Tammy Siegal, 10 Hyde Park in the Village in Beechwood, following interment until 5 p.m. today, and then Shiva will resume tonight from 7 to 9. Friday, Shiva hours are 2 to 6. And then Sunday through Tuesday, 2 to 5 and 7 to 9 p.m. Those who wish may make a donation in Marlene's name to the gathering place. May the all-loving and compassionate God bring you comfort and bring Marlene peace. May your memories remain in your hearts forever, and we say, Amen.